The New York Mets signed Devin Williams. Does it mean that Edwin Diaz is gone forever? Or does it just mean that David Stearns is a genius? This is Jay from Bucket Cap Sports, and I'm here to break it all down and give you my opinion on the Devin Williams signing for the New York Mets. This is brilliant by Stearns because not only is Devin Williams the best possible replacement for Edwin Diaz, he's also the best possible setup man for the New York Mets. Either way, this is a great signing by the New York Mets, whether or not Diaz comes back. Obviously, it's even better if Diaz comes back because then you're stacking that eighth and ninth inning. Even if he doesn't, you sign the best possible replacement who's willing to be the best possible setup man for Diaz. David Stearns and Stephen Cohen are having their cake and eating it too right now. Something that also needs to be looked at is, even though Devin Williams had down numbers for the New York Yankees last year, his fielding independent pitching was actually pretty in line with the rest of his career, 2.68. And it really just suggests that Devin Williams was actually let down by the New York Yankees' defensive abilities as opposed to really having a bad year. You know, some of his numbers were a little bit high, but not nearly the double ERA that the 4.2, 4.5 ERA that he posted for the New York Yankees in 2025. Now, an important caveat there is that last year the New York Mets defense was terrible as well. So it's possible you could have seen those same numbers in New York. However, now that the Mets are strengthening up the middle with Marcus Semion's defense, I think Devin Williams will bounce back and will have better numbers next year. Just really the underlying metrics show us that Devin Williams is primed for a bounce back season, and this 3-year contract looks really good in my opinion. This also shows that Stearns and Cohen don't really care about the media, because there's this long-running joke about the Mets signing Yankee retreads and Yankee rejects, and this is another one of those cases. Guy goes to the Yankees, his ERA is higher than you'd expect it to be, and now he goes to the Mets. Well, guess what? You know, it worked out with Severino, it worked out with Clay Holmes, it worked out with Luis Torrens, even though he never played for the big league Yankees. All three of those guys have been successful New York Mets after kind of just the Yankees being done with them, right? Or never giving them a chance in the case of Luis Torrens. However, that will obviously be a big part of this storyline. There's going to be a lot of articles out there for the clicks saying that this is, once again, the Mets signing a Yankee reject and just becoming the B team of the Bronx. And I don't really think that's the case. I want smart, analytically minded people running our team that don't really care about that storyline or the headlines or the clicks, right? And the Yankee fans on social media and on Reddit, they're going to point to the high ERA and they're going to point to his time in the Bronx and say that he's done and he's washed, but I just don't believe it at all. The velocity's there. His fielding independent pitching is still elite, and I think we're going to see closer to what Devin Williams was 2 years ago when he was one of the best and one of the most consistent closers in baseball. And whether that's an elite setup man or whether that's as good of a replacement as you're going to find for Edwin Diaz, I think that David Stearns and Cohen knocked this one out of the park. This also gives Stearns, Cohen, and the Mets leverage when negotiating with Diaz. They say they're still interested in bringing Diaz back. Well, now they don't need Diaz, and Scott Boras knows that. So this just gives them a little bit of a threat. They can say, hey, we got our guy. We can walk away. We don't need Edwin Diaz. And that could bring that price down just a little bit. I'd caution against that because the Dodgers can also do that. And the Dodgers can also look to add Edwin Diaz. And that would be a little bit scary, right? I don't want to lose Edwin Diaz. If I'm the Mets, I don't want to lose Edwin Diaz to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Um, One, just for the vibes. Citi Field wouldn't be the same without Trumpets, and also losing him to any team, you don't want it to be the Dodgers, who already have one of the best pitching staffs and bullpens in baseball, and just throwing Diaz in on top of that would just shorten all their playoff games by an inning, and they're already pretty short. So my favorite part about this deal is that it gives the Mets a super high ceiling on a setup man slash high leverage reliever, and it gives them a pretty good floor on a closer. Your worst case scenario is that Devin Williams is your closer in 2026, and I think that's kind of the best case scenario that you were going to find if Edwin Diaz was leaving. There was people talking last year about Ryan Helsley being that, and obviously that didn't work out. Where the Mets tried to stack two closers in the last two innings and just shorten the game that much. And Helsley had his tipping thing, so there's a little parallel there with Devin Williams. But I think that they're in the best position to either shorten the game to 7 innings with both of these guys, or at least come up with the best possible closing replacement for Edwin Diaz as a New York Met. Also, I think it says a lot about Devin Williams that he's willing to take whichever role is available to him with the New York Mets, whether that's the closer role or high leverage setup man, high leverage reliever. He knows that he wants to pitch in the playoffs, and if he's pitching alongside Edwin Diaz, then that's great. It doesn't really matter who's closing, and I think that kind of attitude is something that the Mets need in their bullpen and in the clubhouse and just all throughout the organization. They need team first players, and Devin Williams has shown with this signing and with what he said that he is that. And I think especially from a closer, that's rare, right? Closers need to be the man. They need the ball. I think Devin kind of understands that the game going into the future isn't just about one closer who always gets the last 3 outs. It's about having multiple high leverage guys, and this sets the Mets up to potentially do that if they can also bring back Edwin Diaz. As for replicating the Ryan Helsley situation that they had last year, where they had two closers and it didn't really work out with Helsley, I think the idea is right there, of course. But with the tipping pitches issue that Helsley ran into, and then the confidence loss, and he only started bringing that back towards the very end of the year. I think he'll be okay. Mechanically, he's okay. He'll be great in Baltimore, and I think the Mets had the right idea. I just think they got fairly unlucky with when that tipping pitches thing kind of broke out, when the other teams realized that he was doing it. And I think it has more to do with that than it does with certain pitchers just not being able to pitch in New York. And I think the underlying metrics with Devin Williams show that he can pitch in New York. He would be an absolutely epic setup man, or he's the best possible replacement for Edwin Diaz. And lastly, if Diaz does sign, it gives the Mets so much flexibility with what to do during those last 2 innings. Having two guys like this that are two of the best closers at their peak, when they're healthy and pitching well, they are two of the best closers in the National League, in Major League Baseball. And it just shortens games to 7 innings. So I think this is a brilliant move by Steve Cohen. and I think it's a brilliant move by David Stearns. Stearns' genius and Cohen's money really coming together to make this the best of both worlds, because either the Mets set themselves up for success in the post-Diaz world, or the Mets set themselves up to double down and have two great high leverage arms at the end of every game, especially in the postseason, which you're signing these guys for the postseason, right? I know you have to get there first, but really you've got to sign big arms for the postseason, and that's what it looks like the Mets are doing. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Give me a comment. Let me know if you think Devin Williams is the right choice for the Mets. Let me know if you think they're going to also sign Diaz, or if you think this is just replacement all the way. This is Jay for Bucket Cap Sports. Thanks again.